Welcome to an hour of Health-Made Radio. Health-Made is a community for natural health seekers where we educate people about common health conditions and share extensive research on the most effective natural health treatments and promote legislation that protects our health freedoms. Our core concept belief is in the innate intelligence and healing power of the body, and if properly supported spiritually, emotionally, and nutritionally, it can find its way back to health. Health-Made Radio will bring information from integrative health experts throughout the world. Check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, and I will be your host. And today we are having probably one of the guests that I will, it's the most special guest of all. It's actually my wife. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about her journey. And it is a journey that a lot of people here in the United States and all over the world are suffering from. And that is actually people dealing with disease, dealing with pain, and then being prescribed opiates and the impact that that has on their life and how difficult that is to get on or get off. Miste Karlfeldt, you're also the... Yes, it's so great to have you on the show today. Thank you so much.
It's great to be here, hon.
We're actually, for listeners, we're actually in the same house as we're doing the interview, so we're it's kind of funny. So, honey, you have gone through such a tough journey, and if you can kind of tell me a little bit. I mean, obviously, I've been there, for a big part of the journey. But for the listeners, if you can tell me a little bit about how it all transpired. I mean, what kind of health issues were you dealing with, and what did that look like?
So when I started going to you, like a lot of other patients, you're at the end of your rope. You've been told that they can't help you in allopathic medicine, or you've been given an option you don't want. That's what I've noticed as far as the patients at your center. It's sort of at a crossroads. Am I going to work hard to live, or am I going to go this allopathic way, or am I just going to give up? And I was at the point where the Mayo Clinic had suggested or diagnosed me with polyarteritis nodosa, and then prescribed 3 years of chemotherapy. And when I asked them, where are the studies that show that chemotherapy helps classic polyarteritis nodosa? Well, they didn't have any. It's like 1 in a million, so there's not a lot of money put into studying this autoimmune disease that I have. And so there's definitely not studies on how 3 years of chemotherapy affects or doesn't affect, helps or doesn't help polyarteritis nodosa. Well, for me, that was just not an acceptable risk. I was a single mom of 4 at that time. I was in my 30s. Before I had been stricken with this illness, I was young, I was healthy, I was fit, and it just wasn't an option in my view to poison myself to help. That didn't even make sense to me. Now, granted, I was on a page and a half of meds. I'm sitting here looking at my pages of meds, and it was hard to think clearly at that time about what exactly was the right thing. I was, like I said, a single mom. What was I supposed to do? Who was I supposed to turn to? I really didn't know. And all I knew was it didn't make sense to me that chemotherapy, 3 years of it, was going to add years of health and vitality to my life. And with Johns Hopkins, it says you have 7 to 10 years to live with polyarteritis nodosa, and the bonus 3 years are the 3 years you're on chemotherapy. And that didn't sound like a win to me at all.
So for listeners out there, can you tell me a little bit what polyarteritis nodosa is and how it impacted you? I mean, symptom-wise, what did that look like for you?
Oh, my goodness. Well, interestingly, and I don't really still to this day understand how the whole thing came together, in the way that it did. But for years, I was getting these sores on my ankles. I mean, literally for years. And it always happened under high stress situations. And I exhausted allopathic doctors trying to figure out why I was getting these sores that would just open up, within moments, really, on my ankles, especially under high stress situations. And they just couldn't figure it out. I mean, they tested me some more, and they just really didn't have a good answer. So that went on for years. And then I started getting these red kind of rash, but it's under the skin. It's not bumpy. It's not itchy. It didn't move when you pushed on it. And that started coming up my legs, and from those, from the ankles up to my knees. And that really freaked me out too. I was like, what the heck's going on here? This seems to be progressing and nobody seems to know what it is. Other than that, I'm still exercising and eating well and taking care of my kids and running my business. And, sure, those sores were very painful and I spent a lot of time bandaging them up, but it didn't really keep me from living life. But then I got a nerve cluster on the bottom of my right foot, on the ball of my foot, and a doctor had put hydrocortisone or cortisone
shot into it. Yeah.
Yes, cortisone shot into that nerve cluster, and then the next day I really had nerve pain in my whole body. So the doctors still don't understand, how that all comes into play or how that even works out, because was that polyarteritis nodosa when I was getting the sores on my legs years and years ago? Well, I mean, it seems like it was the beginning of it, which doesn't really go with their timeline of 7 to 10 years. That's really why I have learned to sort of shut out what they're saying and listen to the Holy Spirit, listen to my body, and try to just shut out the noise and move forward in what makes sense, what feels right with my soul, what I feel like the Lord is guiding me to do. And really, by the time I came to you, I was bedridden with nerve pain, really bedridden with nerve pain. It was more than I could bear. And I couldn't hold even my toothbrush. It would just fall out of my hand. I was shaking so bad. Which is a horrible time when you're shaking so bad and you're breaking things, and then you really are in so much pain you can't really clean it up. It's a terrible cycle. It was frustrating. It was hard for my children to see me like that, and really to run any kind of a life with them was impossible without my community.
And you were a single mom. You're running your business. And you, obviously, in order to be able to provide for your children, your business had to continue. And you were then in a place where you're pretty much bedridden, which means that you couldn't really run your business. And I mean, how emotionally, I mean, how did that feel like? I mean, that must have been horrendous. I mean, seeing your children were young, I mean, extremely young. Yeah, my littlest was, 2 years old. And I guess the hardest thing, I mean, of course, I was concerned about providing for them and keeping a roof over our heads, and all of that was so overwhelming. But I think on a more day-to-day personal level, the hardest thing was not being able to touch my baby. My baby couldn't touch me. I mean, if she had a bad dream, I couldn't do what your mother instincts is, to run into her room and, hold her and tell her it's all going to be okay. I couldn't do that. I would tell her, come get in bed with mommy, but don't touch mommy and don't shake the bed, because those little shakes of the bed, of her climbing up into the bed, oh my gosh, that was excruciating nerve pain. But I would endure. That was as much as I could endure, to tell her, come in here with mommy. You're going to be okay. Don't touch mommy. Don't shake the bed. It's okay. Mommy loves you, Yeah.
It was just terrible. And then, like, if she got sick, not being able, I mean, I would push through it to try to comfort her when she was sick. But, man, it would wear me out with the pain. It was exhausting. I was taking pain medicine. I was waking up a half an hour before I would attempt to get out of bed to take a lot of pain medicine, give it a half hour to kick in, and then hope that I could get up and try to get my kids out the door. But like I said, my community helped me get the kids to the bus stop, helped me get my kids to school, helped me get my kids fed. I mean, it was just impossible to do on my own.
Yeah, it just shows how important community is. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Miste Gardner-Karlfeldt. We are discussing the impact of pain medication and how dangerous that is and how addictive it is and how important it is to figure out a plan how to get off of it. And we'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Miste Gardner-Karlfeldt. We're discussing opioids and pain medications and the impact that it has in our life, the impact that it has on America, and how important it is to figure out alternatives and figure out solutions. And obviously the pharmaceutical industry is not providing a lot in that area. So here you are. You're in extreme pain. You can't even hold your toothbrush, and at that point, then you recognize that chemotherapy doesn't seem to be a solution. And I agree with you. It's almost like the medical doctors think that they can prophesy and saying that this is the amount of life that you have, and they use that as a beating stick, so that you are forced into take whatever pharmaceutical drug or therapies that they offer so that you can feel good about the negative effect that, like chemo would have, destroying liver, destroying kidney, and all the other things.
Well, it's true. I mean, I remember even asking the doctor because I was just trying to get an idea of how severe or how strong the chemo would be. And so my question was, will I lose my hair? So that was the only thing I could think to ask that would give me a gauge of how intense the chemo treatment might be. And he said to me, well, do you want to lose your hair or do you want to live? And I literally just started sobbing. I was like, how can you talk to me this way? Like, I got myself to the Mayo Clinic, which in itself was, overwhelming and excruciating. I used every bit of life savings I had to make that happen. And I left my children, when I went to the Mayo Clinic, I left them saying, I'm going to come back and I'm going to know how to fix this. That's what I promised them. I promised them this, you're losing me for 10 days while I go to the Mayo Clinic over spring break and your Mimi has to come take care of you. But all of that expense and all of that sacrifice is going to pay off because when I get back from the Mayo Clinic, we're going to know what's wrong with mommy and we're going to fix it. And so to hear this doctor, insinuate that I didn't want to live, it was just, it was so absurd. And so it was just, it was degrading, and really I was just trying to figure out how intense was this treatment going to be. And that was his response to me, which really got my cackles up right away. Because then I was like, you know what? I'm not sure you're the kind of person I want to be taking advice from. If you can talk to a sick and supposedly dying woman, single mom of 4 in that way. Anyway, but I agree with you. It's a terrifying experience. It's overwhelming. And I can tell you, if you don't have the Lord, you don't have the Holy Spirit guiding you, especially in an alone position like I was, it would be very hard to make sound decisions, especially when it comes to these meds. And by that time, I was on, like I said, 1.5 pages of meds. I'm looking at this page right now, and I know it increased from here, but as I go through my records, it looks like I was on hydromorphone, 8 milligrams, 6 tablets per day, along with hydrocodone, 325 milligram tablets, looks like, 2 or 3 times a day. And I remember I ended up going onto just hydromorphone, so I increased the hydromorphone and got off of the hydrocodone, which I thought was a win, according to the doctors at that time. They said that was a cleaner way to go since it didn't have the Tylenol in it.
So now you just kind of get straight opioids.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. It is cleaner. It's straight opioids. Oh, nobody tells you that.
So how Yeah, let's go through all. And what else were you taking in addition to that? I mean, what are some of the other medication? I mean, you were on high dose of prednisone as well, right? And how did that impact you?
Yes, a lot of prednisone. Let's see. It looks like at this time, which, like I said, I think I ended up increasing from here. I was on 3 20-milligram tablets, and I know I increased. If I remember right, I ended up being at like 80 milligrams.
And for how long?
30, I think, oh gosh, a year, over a year.
A year. Because usually with like a prednisone therapy, you do a high dose for, not that long at all. And I'm just talking about days. And then you taper down and have like a maintenance dose of like 5 or 10. Yeah, and 10 tends to be on the higher side. So you're actually on like 60 to 80 for like a year.
Yeah, every time they tried to take me off, everything would just explode. The sores would explode, the spots up my legs would explode. And that was one of the things when I got to the Mayo Clinic is they said, you have so many white blood cells because of all the prednisone you're on. We can't actually tell in your blood work, what is your natural white blood cell response. And of course I was like, then I'll go off, right? I'll go off. And they were like, don't go off. I'm like, heck yeah, I didn't come all the way to the Mayo Clinic for you guys to tell me you can't see what's going on. I'm going off. Well, they ended up, getting me to like one of the higher up guys, one of the higher up doctors kind of, overseeing the Mayo Clinic, really to sit me down and talk some sense into me. Do not go off the prednisone. You will die. And I was like, well, then you've got to give me some other options because I didn't come all this way, for you to tell me you can't see what's going on. Well, that's when they ended up, I let them take a piece of my nerve in my ankle to biopsy that instead, which is how they ended up diagnosing me. But yeah, it was a lot of prednisone. He was like, you do have to get off the prednisone, but you have to do it slower. So they gave me this, protocol of how to get off the prednisone. Well, by the time they called me then, I was weaning myself off the prednisone, just like they said. By the time they called me with my diagnosis and then the chemotherapy treatment, they were going to increase my prednisone again to what I had been on for another 3 years. And I said, you're the one that told me that was going to kill me, that I was on it too long. The Mayo Clinic doctor said they had created it there. They knew what a gift and a miracle, but also what a poison it is, and nobody should be taking that much. And some of my symptoms I attribute to the prednisone, and he said I wasn't wrong. And let me tell you some of these nasty symptoms. One was that I would start sweating profusely from my head. Literally within 5 or 10 minutes, my hair would be soaked with sweat. The other thing is that my muscles were detaching from my bones. And you could just see the separation. You could, if I held up my arm, you could see my muscles hanging and not attached to my bones. And my uterus was falling out. I was deteriorating from the inside out with prednisone. And when they told me 3 more years of that, I was like, look, that's going to kill me. It is. I know what was happening off of prednisone. The good news is, and the miracle that life is, and that God has created our bodies, is that all of that is repaired and healed. All of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's incredible. Yeah, it really shows the resilience of our bodies if taken care of appropriately. And yeah, the damage that these pharmaceuticals can do, and the wisdom of God as He created our bodies, and if we bring in solutions that He brought forth, natural therapies here, we have a chance to reverse a lot of that. Yeah,
I'm pretty amazed because I know what bad shape I was in, and I had that big prednisone face too. I called myself old fat face. It looked like a bobblehead. My body was tiny, but my face was huge. I looked like a bobblehead, and I had a rash at my back. And that prednisone stuff, I don't miss it. But I felt great I felt great while I was deteriorating from the inside out.
Yeah, see, that's the key. Well, let's take a quick break. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm here with Miste Gardner-Karlfeldt. We're talking about the usage of painkillers, of opioids, and the impact it has on America. And we are listening to Miste's personal story, and this is a story that a lot of people are struggling with, and also how she was able to get through it. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Miste Gardner-Karlfeldt. So we talked a little bit about the prednisone and the impact of the prednisone, and working on needing to get off of it, because otherwise you just be a big head, no muscles, and just bone and skin and bones, and that's and no uterus, so
right.
it all is falling out. So every woman's dream, while she's sweating profusely from her head,
right. So really hot stuff. Really, you really felt attractive at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's go out on dates now. So you were at that space, and you came to my center, and I wanted to be a little bit more about your journey than everything that we were doing. So you came to my center, and you'd actually at that time been convinced that you're going to do the chemo, the methotrexate, and that was kind of the first time that we met. You came in for an appointment, and they had called and said that we have to reschedule. What did you feel about that? And one point too that I'd like you to make in regards to when you are on these pain medications, the ability to make appropriate choices and stand up for yourself in your own medical decision making. Please comment a little bit about that as well.
Oh my goodness! I mean, it's overwhelming because you don't understand. I mean, even sober, you don't totally understand everything that they're saying and why they're suggesting certain things. Of course, they have their own lingo, and at that time, not only was I on hydromorphone and prednisone, I was also on Neurontin, which, gabapentin. It actually I hated being on that because I literally couldn't think. I couldn't think. My office manager would ask me something, and I'd just stare at her. I couldn't find two brain cells to put together to make a decision, even in my own business, which I've been doing for years and know it like the back of my hand. And she was like, I hate it when you're on that stuff. Oh, gosh, it was awful. And it didn't help me. So, I'd go off of it, and they'd go, well, they didn't put you on enough. So this time we'll put you on 500 milligrams, And I was like, well, okay, so now I'm stupider and I'm still in a lot more pain. So what do we do? Anyway, it was just awful. I had to get off of that stuff. But, as far as how I was, so the timeline would be then that they had told me that's what I needed to do. And I was like, well, how much time do you think I need to make up my mind? And they were like, well, when you can no longer walk, that's how it's going to then be moving into your organs. And I had lost, and how do I explain, the ability to function at my ankles. My feet couldn't kind of go up and down at the ankles, so I shuffled. I literally, they didn't bend like that anymore. I had to just sort of shuffle along, just push my feet along. Well, I did start tripping over my feet, and I thought, oh my gosh, I haven't found any other solution at this point. I had called some other natural type places where you go and stay, and I really felt like that's probably what I needed because I had so many responsibilities at home with all the kids and my business. How could I really take the time to heal? But I didn't find what I was looking for, and of course, I'm searching during my awake time when I can somewhat function, which doesn't leave you a lot of time to really search. So anyway, I noticed that I just couldn't get the feet to keep going as much anymore. I refused to give in to a wheelchair. I just couldn't do it. I felt like if I sat in a wheelchair, I was never going to get out. Plus, whenever they would like wheel me out of the hospital or whatever, I could feel every single line in the floor, every crack. You know, every time it hits a bump, it was nerve pain, excruciating. So I had incentive that way too, to not get in that wheelchair. So I thought, okay, I guess I'm going to have to do the chemotherapy. I'm not seeing any other option, and I'm obviously progressing, and this is it. Well, as you can imagine, I wasn't the best patient of all time when there's something I really don't want to be doing. And St. Luke's, you know, the Miste place where you go to get the chemotherapy, those poor gals would answer the phone and try to schedule me. And the minute they would screw up, I'd be like, look, I can't do this. You're going to put poison into my veins. You can't even make my appointment. I got to go. Poor gals, if they said even the wrong thing, I was like, nope, I can't even. I'm not coming in. I'll call you later. I can't come in and subject my body to somebody who can't even, schedule me right. Got to go. So then they moved me over to St. Al's. And then I went through their classes and stuff about the chemotherapy, and I literally was crying out to the Lord, I do not want to do this. And to be fair, I was on a lot of chemo drugs already. I think the only thing missing was methotrexate, and that was the one that I had known had something to do with chemotherapy. I didn't know the rest of the meds that I was on were part of the chemo cocktail. But methotrexate I had heard before. And when I looked it up and found out, yeah, that's part of the chemotherapy, I was like, oh my gosh. And the Mayo doctor was like, oh, well, you're already on, the majority of the chemo cocktail already. And I was like, oh my gosh, why don't you people tell me these things, So anyway, it was like, okay, I guess that's what I have to do. But like you said, I finally had it scheduled. I had scheduled family to come in and take care of the kids. I think it was, the first 3 months were going to be really difficult. So I had like a month's worth of help and everything lined up, and my business buttoned up for a month, all these things. And then they called me the day before I was supposed to start and said, we can't start you tomorrow. We're going to have to wait a week or two. And oh my gosh, after I had finally, resigned myself to this was what I was going to do, I had made all these arrangements, and I thought, how in the world can you do this to me? I don't want to do it anyway. And I've had to move heaven and earth to make this happen, where I have care for a month. And now you just, without a care in the world, call me and tell me that you can't do it. Well, I was like, a half hour, 45 minutes late coming into your office. I was in the parking lot having this conversation and bawling my eyeballs out. And I walk into your office, just a puffy red, snotty mess with my big bobblehead.
Sweating profusely over your head. Yeah. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And, you said you thought you could help me. And they called to reschedule, and I said, I don't know that I'm going to do it, And boy, the minute I said I wasn't going to do it, all the doctors came out of the woodwork to try to convince me again to do it. I ended up calling one of the doctors I had gone to in Salt Lake. She was the one doctor that I felt saw me. She was actually the one doctor I went to where I didn't take any pain meds that day, because I wanted somebody to see how much pain I was in without them. And I felt like she really saw it. I could see the heartbreak on her face. So for whatever reason, I really, like I said, I believe it's the Holy Spirit guiding me. I called her and I said, here's my options. And I'm going down this natural path, and this is the other option with the chemotherapy. And, I just needed somebody to give me some input, because I knew I just wasn't, or I thought I just wasn't clear enough to make my own decisions. I needed some input. I needed some people to weigh in that had clear mind and a good mind. And she said, I don't know. All I can say is I would do anything before I would do chemotherapy.
Really?
And it was just what I needed to hear. It really was just what I needed to hear. And it gave me just enough of a resolve. And I knew, too, she probably wasn't supposed to say that. And she was going out on a limb saying that to me. And so I just put that in my little heart pocket. And I just went, okay, here we go. I'm just going to keep going in this direction. No matter how many times they called me, I just said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm trying this out first. And I'm glad I did. I'm really thankful. I know the Lord saved my life.
Yeah.
If I had done chemotherapy, it would have killed me. I know it would have killed me. I was on death's door already. So being put back together, and that was not an easy road. That was not an easy road. And it still is not an easy road. It's hard. I work hard to be alive and to live as full of a life as possible. But I am med free.
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick break, and in the next segment, I want to get into how you got off of all the pain medication, because that is the biggest issue that people are dealing with. We'll be right back. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Miste Gardner-Karlfeldt, and we're talking about her journey that she went through dealing with an autoimmune condition that is deadly, something that moves into the organs, shuts down the organs, and the only solution that the medical world had was to extend her life using chemotherapy. But in order to be able to deal with all the pain that this condition, polyarteritis nodosa, she was on extreme amount of pain medication, of opioids. And as we all know, we're dealing with an opioid crisis here in the United States and have for a while. So obviously you started with naturopathic, we did, chelation therapies, we did ozone, we did vitamin C, we did hyperbaric, we did a lot of those different things, to help to start to heal your body, we did supplements. But in regards to getting off the medication, I mean, what did that look like? I mean, here, what did that journey look like? I mean, because when you're extreme pain, the what you want is no pain, and the pharmaceutical drugs, they provide that. So it feel like they are your best friends forever. So how did you create that separation from that?
Well, I really felt the Lord starting to get my attention on the opium business. The doctors did not give me informed consent. They did not inform me of what I was taking. They did not inform me of the addictive quality or how it ruins lives and families. And I'm not saying that I would have made a different choice. I was desperate, literally desperate at that point to just be able to survive. But I might have handled things differently if I had known. I might have managed my pain differently or sought something else. I literally didn't have a reason to think that I should do anything differently. So it's completely naive about it. So I really felt the Lord starting to get my attention about what it is and what I was taking, and I started seeing things here and there. For instance, we were at a restaurant on a bulletin board, and there was one of those advertisements with little hanging papers with numbers so you can contact someone. And it said, are you on these drugs, these opium drugs? And is it ruining your family? Are you in trouble with the law? All these things. And I was waiting in line for the bathroom reading this and going, oh my gosh, that's what I'm taking. I didn't know it could do that. What is this stuff, right? And I just was overwhelmed with the concern of, what have I done? What am I taking? And that was just one moment. There were other little moments, little advertisements or something somebody would say, or I would hear of somebody else. And I just felt this leading, like, I need to get off of these things. And I don't know. I knew that I was physically addicted. meaning I needed it to keep moving. I needed it to get out of bed. I needed it to numb my pain. But as I went through the journey, I found that I was not emotionally or mentally addicted. I guess I would say emotionally and mentally to a small degree, where I thought, if something happens in the world, an earthquake or whatever, that keeps me from being able to get my meds, I don't know how I would take care of my kids. I don't think I could get us out of harm's way. I didn't like being dependent on something like that could easily not be something I could get my hands on. So that was a concern as well. So I started, wanting to get off of that, and I was already being treated by you at the center, and I credit the IVs and the hyperbaric chamber that I was doing for giving me the strength that I needed, the inner strength. And it didn't feel like strength at the time. Let me be clear for those listening. It didn't feel like strength at the time. But I had to have had some kind of energy or strength to be able to make those decisions to go off. So as I dropped, each 8 milligram pill, I would go a couple weeks. And at the beginning, I was like, wow, this is easy. I've got this. I totally got this. What is all the hubbub about on this, I'm getting off of the opium. I got this. Well, and what was really great, I hope this encourages some listeners out there, I remember the moment when I got my curiosity back, when I wanted to learn something, when I wanted to read something, because up until that point, I was just numb. I was a numb zombie, just sort of trying to survive and get through life. But I didn't have any desire to read something or the ability to really understand it. And I remember when I called my friend Sherry and I was like, I read something and I wanted to read some more and I was curious and I'm so excited because I felt like I was finding myself again. So that was a big moment. That spurred me on. Well, when I got down to the last, 16 or 24 milligrams, I had to start cutting those pills and trying to stretch it out longer. I was always very regimented about when I would take it because I felt like that was being in control, right? So every 4 hours I would take it. I'd set my alarm. I was on the dot. I wasn't going to just keep popping it and feeling like, I'm just, medicating whenever I hurt. I was very regimented about it. And anyway, in those last, 16 milligrams, I was cutting the pills and spacing it out. So that would look like I would take a half of a pill, and then when it came to 4 hours, I would push it, right? So I would do 4.5 hours, or I would do 5 hours. Well, that meant that a half hour or an hour, that meant I was laying on the floor, shivering and holding myself and having the absolute worst terror in your mind possible. And I would have my timer going, and I would have my pill there, and I would have my water there. And this is generally in my office because, like I said, I was still trying to keep my business going. And I would just shut the door to my office, tell my office manager, look, don't come in for the next half hour, an hour. And I would lay on that cement floor and just shiver and shake and have, honestly, the worst mental thoughts you could have. And then my timer would go off, and I would take my pill, and I would drink my water, and within 10 minutes, I was up and ready to work, up typing at my desk, making my phone calls, like nothing happened. And that's how addicted my body got to those meds. My body was definitely addicted. And the more I saw the addiction of my body, the more grossed out I was by it, repulsed by it, mentally and emotional. I wanted nothing to do with this kind of physical addiction. So I just kept doing it. I spent a lot of time in the hyperbaric chamber. That was the only place I had pain relief and could really sleep. Everything hurt. What they don't tell you is that when you take these meds, you create more pain receptors. Can you imagine somebody who's already in pain and you're creating more pain receptors? So you're stuck in this cycle of hurting more than anybody else. Like I told my kids, if you stub your toe and I stub my toe, not only because of my illness, but because of my extra pain receptors, it hurts me exponentially more. That's how they keep you trapped on taking these meds and increasing the meds, because you can never get on top of the pain, really. And what relief you do get is a loan. It's a pain loan. A pain-free loan. You might be without that pain or less pain for 4 hours, but the pain that you have to suffer to pay back that loan is exponentially more. It's horrendous. Getting off, it literally felt like my body was ripping apart. It was awful, and I wish I had known what I was in for. I wish I had informed consent. I wish I'd had explained to me that I was going to create more pain receptors the more of those pills that I took. I think I would have done things a little differently.
And now also you have the issue with, because of this opioid crisis, they are medical doctors. They are just kind of janking these opioids, these pain medications, away from patients that are in a desperate spot. Like you're mentioning, your fear of all of a sudden you're in a place and you're not able to get a hold of this medication, and now you're in a horrendous spot. And so now it's like you're creating this addiction and this need, the medical doctors, and then they are, because it looks bad on them because of the opioid crisis, then they're just kind of saying, no, you can't have it anymore, and putting people in the spot, now what? Instead of like you were doing, you had the chance to wean off, but they aren't in that spot.
Right. I mean, I can speak to it from having been there. They are creating criminals. If they had taken that away from me suddenly, and I couldn't function and raise my children, I would have been grasping at straws to find anything to help me cope and continue to live. I praise God. I thank God that He guided me to get off of it before they did that to me. But I can see how that can happen. I can see how they can create criminals, and then they're acting all surprised, like, oh my gosh, why are you ruining your life stealing or trying heroin, or stealing, becoming criminals and stealing for it. And they're like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? Well, you did that to people. You did that to people when you didn't tell them what they were getting into. You did that to people when you overprescribed. And then you did that to people when you took it away without any hope or help. I've heard from other patients now, other people that have been in similar situations as me, the mechanisms that they have out there to help people cope with pain or getting off of addiction is subpar at best. I would hate to think that it's actually set up for people to fail, but that's what it looks like. And then a friend of mine told me about her brother who's been addicted to opium. And she said that the way they've treated his nerve pain is to do nerve ablation to his nerves many times. I know a lot of people don't understand how much pain it is for your nerves to heal, but that's a lot of pain. And if you've created a lot of or pain receptors because you've been taking these opiums, I guarantee you it's going to hurt exponentially more for those nerves to heal. Now your body keeps going into this cycle of being mutilated and then trying to heal, and then you're being told you can't have pain medicine to try to go through that, all in the name of help with pain. How does that make any sense? It doesn't make any. It's barbaric. It's absolutely barbaric. And to be honest with you, that story moved me to want to tell my story, because if I can help or save one person from going through nerve ablation to help you with your pain, I'll share my story. I'm a private person. I don't like to tell my stuff. I don't like to share my story. But even if there's one person out there that I can save from nerve ablation in the name of pain management, I will do it willingly and with a happy heart. And I really do hope that it helps somebody, because that is barbaric and unacceptable.
Yeah, and it seems like, I mean, we all tout how we are in such advanced society, technologically advanced society, and we are still dealing with these, barbaric medical, methods, that seems to be more torturous. I mean, here we're literally physically burning things. We should have, by now, we should have figured out something much better, much more humane, and also really figure out ways to take care of these people. And it's not like it's just one or two people. We're talking about millions of people. This is a huge crisis. In fact, I had a patient, and I knew their whole family, known them for a long time. She was dealing with back surgery. They put her on opioids, because of the pain after the surgery, and she couldn't get off of the opioids, and she felt so disgusted and so disgusted with herself that she couldn't. So she actually ended up committing suicide, because that was the only way that she felt she could get away from this addiction. So this is something that we need to figure out a better solution than what's out there. It is ridiculous what's going on right now.
I agree with you. There's a show I want to watch that actually, popped up on my news feed the other day called Dope Sick. I really want to watch that because it is about the pandemic or the epidemic of opium addiction. And I think education is key. I mean, I didn't know. I had no idea. And like my friend's brother that's getting all the nerve ablation, he's now living with his mom. He's now living on taxpayer money because his life has been completely destroyed. So here he got set up on these meds. The meds got taken from him. Now he has this, barbaric treatment, and he can't function in life. How many people has this kind of thing happened to, or like your patient who ended up committing suicide and their whole family suffers from the loss of a loved one? We are too advanced, and this is unacceptable. We should not be continuing on this path. And I would suggest, because I know that it helped me, is things like the GAPS diet, where you really nourish your nerves, things like the hyperbaric chamber, and nutritional IVs. These are the things that supported my body and nourished my body into health. I didn't cut it. I stopped poisoning it and expecting health. Those are not the path to health and wellness. They just aren't. Cutting and poisoning and burning, that's never going to get us to health. But nourishing our bodies, putting in the fats that we need for our nerves, going into the hyperbaric chamber to generate healing, and supporting our immune system while we do it with nutritional IVs, I honestly think, and in speaking from experience, that's where it's at.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for sharing your personal journey, and I have no doubt that this is going to impact many, many people out there. Thank you so much.
I really hope it does. God bless you all out there. And if you're suffering, there is other help.
That is it for today. You're listening to Health Made Radio. Remember, check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it.